lovely people, my name's Nicole, and I was gonna wait a little bit to do my November wrap-up, mostly just because I did not read as much as I wanted this month, and so I was trying to like squeeze in a few more books, but I was doing a like skit thing for a class today, and so I got my hair all pretty and I did my makeup all nicely. I was wearing this like super Jessica Rabbit dress earlier, but I figured since I am already all dolled up, I might as well just bite the bullet, do my wrap up now. I am a little behind on my reading challenge. I don't know why November was such a weird month for reading. I ended up DNFing a few books, but let's just jump right into the wrap up, and I will just read like crazy in December and read a lot of comic books because those are fast. Alright, so the first book I read was The Winner's Kiss by Marie Rutkowski, and this is the third and final book in the Winner's trilogy, and I liked this. I read these books really far spaced out, so I have a hard time connecting a little bit, but that's really my own fault. This is one of those series that is just so easy to just completely fall into it and lose track of time while you're reading, which is really what at least what I love in a book, the books that make you forget that you're even reading. The main relationship between Kestrel and Aaron is fantastic. There were a lot of really interesting plot twists in this one. All the characters are complex and interesting, although my only issue with it felt like things were wrapped up a little bit too quickly, but the way that they were wrapped up was satisfying, so I gave it 4 stars. Then I read The ABCs of LGBT by Ashley Mardell, and this book is fantastic. I think the easiest thing to compare it to is This Book is Gay by James Dawson, but this is so much better. And a number of issues with This Book is Gay, with it being not super inclusive. It mainly just focused on gay, lesbian, and like with an asterisk for like bisexual and transgender. But this is so comprehensive, and in the pieces that Ashley didn't know, they were honest and said like they couldn't find a source for this, or they didn't have anyone to talk to who actually identified with this identity, and so they didn't feel like they could justifiably talk about it. And they say, you know, if there's any issues with it, if I missed anything, if I provided any incorrect information, they provide a website link that you can go to and submit your corrections, your additions, anything like that. They've been talking about doing a sequel. There's actually a little bit in the end that talks about what terms and things that they would like to talk about in the sequel. Whenever there's a term that has some controversy around it, Ashley mentions the controversy, sort of gives both sides of it, and it's just really well done and acknowledges that this is a really hard topic and it's a really complicated topic, and so there's no right answer for a lot of these things, but that it's okay if you don't feel like any of these labels fit you, or if, you know, you find the label that you've been looking for all your life in this, or if you just don't like labels, that's okay, and Ashley acknowledges that, and it's so well done and so well written, and it's just beautiful. It also has stories from people, and it has pictures and doodles, and it's just so good. So I gave it 5 stars. Then I read The Sun is Also a Star by Nicole Yoon, and I adore Nicole Yoon's writing. It's so good. The writing is stunning. The characters are wonderful and engaging and lovable without being perfect people. They have their flaws, and there are definitely moments where you're annoyed at them, but they're good people, and they're so good together. They're so different, and yet they fit together like puzzle pieces. I did think there was a little bit of insta-love considering the fact that the book only takes place over the course of a day, but it was so cute that I was kind of willing to forgive it. I loved the ending. I won't say what it was, obviously, because spoilers, but I thought the way it was done was awesome. And this book tackles an issue that I haven't really read about in YA before, and that's immigration. I know Melissa de la Cruz's new book also talks about it. I'm really looking forward to reading that and picking that one up, but it was so cool and so interesting to read about this, and I think it's really important to have these kinds of books that humanize people who are so often hotly debated in the media and politically, and so having books like this that reminds us that, you know, immigrants are people who, like, they're not just like a concept to debate over, they're actual people whose lives are being affected by this. I think that's so important. The structure of this book is really weird and interesting, and I kind of like it. It's basically, it switches off chapters between the characters and then sometimes there'll be an extra like snippet or chapter interjected between that talks about a concept and how that relates to the story, or explores the life of a side character, even just like a character who was just mentioned in passing. Like at one point it goes into the life story of like a security guard, and it's so interesting. It's this sort of remembering that everyone around you has a story and has like a life and isn't just like side characters in your own tale, and it's really, really cool. So I love this book. I highly recommend it. I think I may have liked it even more than Everything, which is saying something, so I gave it 5 stars. Then I read Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy by Cassandra Clare, Sarah Reese Brennan, Maureen Johnson, and Robin Wasserman, and this book is so good. I loved it. It makes me so happy. I love getting back in the Shadowhunter world. It's just so much fun, and I love Simon. He's always been one of my favorite characters. He's definitely probably the character I relate to most. It's hard because I don't want to say the actual plot of this book because like it's a huge spoiler for the end of the Mortal Instruments series, but it's really good and I love exploring that world that we explore in this, and I hate having to be this vague, but you guys, I'm trying to be a good person, so it's just real good. Like, trust me on that. I gave it 5 stars. Then I read Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, and I read the really cool Mina Lima edition, and I wish I had it with you, but unfortunately I brought it home. But it's super pretty, and it has all these fantastic illustrations and like interactive elements that's really, really interesting. And Peter Pan, the story itself, is weird. Yep, I think that's a good way to say it. It's not the Disney movie. I mean, obviously, like, the basic overarching plot matches up with the Disney movie fairly well. But, there are a number of, like, details, and a lot of them are just one-line things that are never talked about again that are just disturbing. For example, Peter Pan it's just casually mentioned that whenever the Lost Boys get too old or too mature, he just takes them out into the woods and takes care of them, which is a little intimidating. The Peter in this story is not the carefree, you know, fun little tyke or whatever that's in the Disney movie. The Peter in this movie is pretty much, I mean, he's like an 8-year-old boy. And he acts like an 8-year-old boy, and some of the worst parts of kids are very visible with Peter, in that he is impulsive and he is very controlling and he really likes to live in his own fantasy world. And when he is using his imagination for something, everyone else has to play along. And if anyone like breaks the fourth wall, or if anyone like pops the bubble, he flips out. Like, sometimes the Lost Boys have to just pretend to eat dinner because Peter's, like, in his imagination land, and it's disturbing. Obviously, I mean, the story is a classic, and it's wonderful, and there's, of course, that little nostalgia place because as disturbing as a lot of the elements of the real story are, I still grew up with the movie. Of course, there's also the issue of, it's very racist, like, bad, like, no. The way J.M. Barrie writes Native Americans is not good. Not at all good. But overall, I gave it 3 stars because it was a little bit, like, out there at times, but it's also, like, it's a classic and it's nostalgia and all that jazz. Then I read History of Sexuality by Micheal Foucault, and this is one that I read for a class, for a GQS class, and it's kind of a classic in the, like, sexuality, gender politics world, although it's the kind of classic that you mention it in a room full of GQS students and everyone starts groaning and or crying, because Foucault is not fun to read. He makes a lot of really, really interesting points and says some things that are very poignant and very interesting, but his writing style, I've heard that it's better in the original French, but the translations are not fun to read. His sentences are convoluted and really long and just confusing, and you have to take like twice as much time after you've read it to just try and figure out what the hell he's saying. But he is a very smart man and he wrote some very interesting things, so I gave it 3 stars. Then I read The Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them Screenplay, and my thoughts on this are pretty much the same as my thoughts on the film, so I will link my full-length review for the film in the doobly-doo. Basically, it's just, this is literally like a word-for-word translation of the film. I think the best part about this, other than the like illustrations, which a lot of them were really, really pretty, this is just a beautifully designed book, of course, because it's designed by Micheal, because they do all of the Harry Potter design stuff. But also I really enjoyed reading the stage directions. They're not really stage directions, I don't know what the translation is for movies. All the like descriptions of how people are supposed to be feeling, and like he looked sad or whatever, and how that translated to the screen is really interesting. Also, it named a lot of the creatures that I missed in the film, which was really, really cool. Just going through this with my copy of Fantastic Beasts, the other version, the like textbook version, and like comparing and seeing what I can find, and it was just really fun and I really enjoyed it, so I gave it 4 stars. And then I started but did not finish 2 books. The first one was Spontaneous by Aaron Starmer. I got about 150 pages into this one before DNFing, and this one, it's not that it was bad, it was just a little bit out there for me. The main girl's like sense of humor just was a little bit too much for me, and the main guy was honestly just creepy, and I was not a fan of him or the relationship between them. It felt like too much and not quite my thing, so I put it down, decided not to worry too much about it. I wasn't really loving it that much. I spent the first 150 pages just being like, and do I want to put it down? Do I want to push through? I just decided just not to waste my time with something that's not bringing me joy. So, and then the other one I DNF'd was Vasa in the Night by Sarah Porter, and this is one that, again, I got like 50 pages into it, maybe more, but I wasn't feeling it. It was really weird, and I found the main character to be kind of and her like best friend gremlin character, whatever it was, I just found her to be really, really annoying. Again, it just didn't feel like my thing, and I just decided if I'm not enjoying it, I'm not going to waste my time reading it, and I will give it to half price or to Goodwill, or just make sure that someone else who will enjoy it can get it. Alright, so those are all the books I read this month. Let me know what you guys thought of any of these in the comments. Not a great reading month. I'm gonna have to make up for it next month. I have, according to my Goodreads challenge, I have to read 18 books in December. So that'll be fun. I'll make it work. We'll figure it out. That's what Christmas Booktubeathon and like Christmathon are for. So we'll see. Alright. I love you, and I will see you later.